My name is Samantha, and I'm 28 years old. 3 months ago, I stood in the rain outside my childhood home. My 2 young children were crying in my car. We had nowhere to go. My parents had just told me they couldn't help us anymore. But they'd given my brother Jake a down payment for his third investment property that same week. The favoritism that had shaped my entire life had finally crossed a line I never thought they'd cross. This is the story of how discovering my parents' true priorities forced me to rebuild my life from nothing. How I learned that blood doesn't always mean family, and how sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself. I grew up believing family meant unconditional support, that parents loved all their children equally. I was wrong about both things. Dead wrong. The night that changed everything started like any other Tuesday. I was putting my 5-year-old daughter Emma and 3-year-old son Tyler to bed in our tiny apartment. The eviction notice had arrived that morning. 60 days to find somewhere new to love. My ex-husband had stopped paying child support 6 months earlier. He'd moved across the country with his new girlfriend, left me with 2 kids, mounting debt, and a job that barely covered daycare costs. I was drowning, and I knew. That's when I called my parents. I'd never asked them for money before, not once in my adult life. I was desperate, but I still believed they'd help their daughter and grandchildren in crisis. Dad answered on the second ring. His voice was warm, familiar. "Sammy? What's wrong? You sound upset." I explained everything through tears. The eviction. The missing child support. How scared I was that we'd end up in our car. I asked for help with a deposit on a new place. Just enough to keep us housed. "Oh, honey," he said, "let me talk to your mother. We'll figure something out." But when Mom called back 2 hours later, her tone was different. Cold. Calculating. She said they couldn't help right now. Money was tight. They had their own expenses to worry about. I hung up feeling hollow, confused. My parents had always been comfortable. Dad owned a successful landscaping business. Mom worked part-time at the bank. They owned their house outright. Money had never seemed to be an issue growing up. That's when I decided to drive by Jake's house. My younger brother lived 20 minutes away in a neighborhood I could never afford. I thought maybe I could talk to him, see if he had any ideas. What I found there changed everything I thought I knew about my family. There was a moving truck in his driveway. Workers were carrying expensive furniture into what looked like a brand new house. It was massive, easily twice the size of his previous place. Jake saw me pull up and walked over with a huge grin. "Sam, perfect timing. Come see the new place. Just closed on it yesterday." I followed him inside in a daze. The house was beautiful, hardwood floors throughout, a kitchen that belonged in a magazine, a playroom bigger than my entire apartment. "This must have cost a fortune," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Jake shrugged. "Mom and Dad helped with the down payment. Early inheritance, they called it. Said they wanted to see me enjoy it while they're still around." The words hit me like a physical blow. My parents couldn't help their daughter and grandchildren avoid homelessness, but they could give my brother money for his third house in 5 years. I left without saying congratulations. I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat at my kitchen table and cried. Not just from sadness, but from a deep sense of betrayal that went back years. Suddenly, so many things made sense. The expensive tools Dad had bought Jake for his construction, business, the family vacations Jake's family always seemed to afford, the way my parents' faces lit up when he entered a room versus the polite smiles I got. I'd been the responsible one my whole life. Good grades, stable job, never asked for anything. Jake had been the charmer, the one with big dreams and expensive tastes, and apparently, he'd been the favorite all along. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you about this life-changing decision, hit like and subscribe to hear more real stories about family loyalty and betrayal that might just change how you see your own relationships. Looking back, the signs of favoritism were always there. I just chose not to see them. Growing up, Jake was the golden child, 3 years younger than me, but somehow always the center of attention. He had Dad's easy smile and Mom's quick wit. I was the quiet one, the responsible one who cleaned her room without being asked and never caused trouble. When Jake struggled in school, my parents hired expensive tutors. When I struggled with math in 7th grade, Dad told me to work harder. Jake got a new car for his 16th birthday. I got a part-time job to save for my own. But I told myself these differences didn't matter. Jake needed more support, I reasoned. I was stronger, more independent. I wore their neglect like a badge of honor. My parents, Linda and Robert, weren't cruel people. They were just inconsistent. Mom worked at First National Bank for 20 years. She was practical, efficient, always worried about appearances. What would people think if Jake didn't succeed? What would her coworkers say if he dropped out of college? Dad was different. Quieter, but equally invested in Jake's success. He'd built his landscaping business from nothing, worked 70-hour weeks to give us a comfortable middle-class life. He saw potential in Jake that apparently he'd never seen in me. My younger sister Chloe, now 24, fell somewhere in the middle. She was the baby, the artistic one who could do no wrong. But even she noticed the difference in how Jake and I were treated. "It's like you're invisible sometimes," she told me once during college. "They talk about Jake's achievements for hours. You got promoted to manager and Dad just grunted and asked for more coffee." I brushed off her observation then. I was used to being overlooked. I'd built my identity around not needing validation from anyone. That independence served me well when I met David in college. He was charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted in a partner. We married 2 years after graduation. I was 23 and convinced I'd found my happily ever after. The first few years were good. We both worked, saved money, talked about the future. When Emma was born, I felt complete for the first time in my life. Here was someone who would love me unconditionally, someone who needed me. Tyler followed 2 years later. David seemed excited about being a father, but his behavior began changing. He worked later hours, went out with friends more often, started questioning every dollar I spent on the kids. The distance between us grew slowly, like water carving through stone. We stopped talking about anything meaningful. He resented my attention to the children. I resented his lack of involvement in their lives. When I found out about his affair, I wasn't surprised. Devastated, but not surprised. The other woman was younger, childless, everything I wasn't anymore. He moved in with her 6 months later. The divorce was brutal. David fought me on everything: child support, custody, dividing our minimal assets. My parents offered emotional support but no practical help. They said marriage problems were between spouses. They wouldn't get involved. But when Jake's first business venture failed 3 years ago, they gave him $40,000 to start over. When his marriage hit rough patches, Mom babysat his kids every weekend and cooked meals for his family. The double standard was exhausting. I stopped expecting equal treatment and focused on surviving as a single mother. Working full-time while raising 2 small children alone pushed me to my limits. Daycare costs ate most of my salary. The apartment we could afford was in a questionable neighborhood. I lay awake nights worrying about money, about safety, about whether I was failing my children. But I kept going. I had to. Emma and Tyler needed stability, and I was determined to provide it somehow. My extended family didn't make things easier. Uncle Mike, Dad's brother, always asked about Jake's latest projects at family gatherings. Aunt Sarah, Mom's sister, gushed about Jake's children while barely acknowledging mine. Even my grandparents seemed more interested in Jake's life than mine. It was like I existed on the periphery of my own family, present but not important, loved but not prioritized. I accepted this dynamic because I didn't know I had a choice. The night I discovered Jake's new house shattered that acceptance. I realized I'd been enabling their favoritism by never challenging it, by accepting scraps of attention while watching them shower Jake with opportunities. The days following my discovery of Jake's new house were a blur of anger and planning. I had 58 days to find housing for my children and me. My parents' betrayal had lit a fire under me that I didn't know existed. I called my best friend, Maria, that Thursday morning. We'd known each other since high school, and she was the only person who'd witnessed my family dynamics firsthand. She'd always seen what I'd refused to acknowledge. "They gave Jake another down payment?" she asked, her voice rising. "Sam, this is insane. Your kids could end up homeless while your brother buys investment properties?" Hearing someone else say it out loud made the situation feel even more surreal. "I don't understand how they justify it," I said. "I've never asked them for anything major before." "Because you've never needed to," Maria replied. "You've been independent your whole life. They know Jake will fail without their help, so they keep propping him up. They assume you'll figure it out on your own because you always do." Her words stung because they were true. I had always figured it out. I'd worked through college while Jake partied on my parents' dime. I'd supported myself through my divorce while they paid for Jake's marriage counseling. I'd raised my children, alone while they babysat Jake's kids every weekend. But this was different. This wasn't about convenience or comfort. This was about basic shelter for two innocent children. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. I called my supervisor at the marketing firm where I worked and asked about the remote position that had been mentioned in our last team meeting. The pay was slightly less, but it would eliminate daycare costs and give me flexibility. "We can make that work," she said. "When would you want to start?" "As soon as possible," I replied. Next, I researched housing markets in smaller cities, within driving distance of my current location, places where I could afford rent without my parents' help, where my children could have yards to play in and good schools to attend. I found a promising lead in Millbrook, about 90 minutes away. The cost of living was 40% lower. The schools had excellent ratings. There were job opportunities if I ever wanted to work in an office again. I scheduled a viewing for that weekend. But first, I needed to have a conversation with my family. I called Chloe and asked her to meet me for coffee. She arrived looking concerned. "You sounded upset on the phone. What's going on?" I told her everything. The eviction notice, my request for help, Jake's new house. Chloe's expression grew darker with each detail. "I knew they favored Jake, but this is ridiculous," she said. "You have kids, Sam. They're grandchildren. How can they justify this?" "I don't think they see it as favoritism," I said. "I think they see it as helping the child who needs it most. Jake has always needed more help, so they keep giving it." Chloe shook her head. "That's not how parenting is supposed to work. You don't reward the child who makes poor decisions while ignoring the one who's responsible." She offered to lend me money for a deposit, but her teacher's salary wouldn't stretch that far. The gesture meant everything, though. At least one family member saw how wrong this situation was. That evening, I called my parents and asked to meet with them in person. I needed to give them one more chance to do the right thing, to prioritize their grandchildren's welfare over their golden child's comfort. We met at their house the next evening, the same house where I'd grown up, where Jake and I had played in the backyard, where family dinners had once been warm and inclusive. Mom served coffee in the good china, the same cup she'd used for important conversations my entire life. Dad sat in his usual recliner, looking uncomfortable. "I need to ask you something directly," I began. "Will you help me and the kids with housing? I'm not asking for a gift like you gave Jake. I'm asking for a loan. I'll pay you back with interest." My parents exchanged glances. Mom spoke first. "Samantha, we've already explained. Money is tight right now." "But you just gave Jake tens of thousands for a house," I said, trying to keep my voice level. Dad shifted in his chair. "That's different. Jake needed help getting established. You're older, more mature. We know you'll land on your feet." Their confidence in my resilience felt like punishment for my competence. I was being penalized for every responsible choice I'd ever made. Have you ever been in a situation where doing the right thing actually worked against you? Let me know in the comments, because what happened next changed how I saw everything. The conversation with my parents reached a breaking point when I showed them the eviction notice. I placed it on their coffee table between us, the legal document that proved my children's housing was in jeopardy. Mom glanced at it briefly, then looked away. "We're sorry you're going through this, but we simply can't help right now." "Can't or won't?" I asked, my voice sharper than I'd intended. Dad's face hardened. "We don't owe you an explanation for our financial decisions." That's when something inside me snapped. Years of swallowed resentment came pouring out. "You're right," I said, standing up. "You don't owe me anything, just like I don't owe you anything, including pretending this family is something it's not." Mom looked genuinely shocked. "Samantha, you're being dramatic." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone and showed them photos I'd taken of Jake's new house. "This is dramatic? Your son buying his third house while your grandchildren face homelessness?" Dad's jaw tightened. "Jake works hard for what he has." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Jake works hard? I've been working since I was 16. I put myself through college. I've raised 2 children alone for 3 years. What exactly has Jake done that I haven't done better?" "Your brother has vision," Mom said defensively. "He's building something bigger than himself." "And I'm not?" I asked. "I'm raising 2 human beings. I'm building their entire foundation for life. But apparently, that doesn't count because it's not profitable." The truth hung in the air between us. They valued Jake's financial ambitions more than my children's welfare. They saw his potential as more important than our immediate needs. Chloe chose that moment to arrive. I'd asked her to come as moral support, but seeing her walk into this tense scene made everything more real. "What's going on?" she asked, looking between our faces. "Your sister is upset because we can't help with her housing situation," Dad said, making it sound like I was being unreasonable. Chloe's eyes flashed with anger I'd never seen before. "Can't help? You just bought Jake a house." "We gave Jake a loan," Mom corrected. "No, you didn't," Chloe shot back. "I heard you talking about it last week. You called it an early inheritance. You said you'd rather see him enjoy the money while you're alive." The silence that followed was deafening. My parents had been caught in their lie, and everyone in the room knew it. Dad stood up slowly. "This conversation is over. We've made our decision." "So have I said, my voice steady now. "I'm done pretending we're a close family. I'm done accepting crumbs while Jake gets the feast. My children deserve better than grandparents who see them as less important than their uncles' investment portfolio." Mom's face went pale. You don't mean that. I absolutely mean it, I said. When Emma and Tyler ask why we can't visit Grandma and Grandpa anymore, I'll tell them the truth. That family isn't about blood. It's about showing up when someone needs you. I walked toward the door, Chloe following close behind me. As I reached for the handle, Mom called out, "Samantha, wait. Maybe we could do something small. A few thousand?" I turned around slowly. Even now, she was negotiating, trying to find the minimum amount that would ease her conscience without actually solving the problem. "Keep your money," I said. "I'll figure it out myself. I always do." Outside in the driveway, Chloe hugged me tight. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "That needed to happen years ago." I felt emotionally drained but strangely liberated, for the first time in my adult life, I'd spoken my truth to my parents. I'd stopped protecting their feelings at the expense of my own dignity. The drive home was quiet. Emma and Tyler were asleep at Maria's house, unaware that their world was about to change completely. I had 52 days to create a new life for us. 52 days to prove that we didn't need anyone's charity to survive. That night, I called the landlord in Millbrook and put a deposit on a small house with a yard. It was a leap of faith funded by my credit card, but it felt like the first honest decision I'd made in years. If you've ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-respect, you know how hard this was. But sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what you're truly capable of achieving. Moving to Millbrook with 2 young children and no local support system was terrifying. But as I unpacked boxes in our new house 6 weeks later, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: pride in my own strength. The house wasn't much to look at from the outside. A small 3-bedroom, ranch built in the 70s with outdated fixtures and carpet that had seen better days. But it had something our apartment never offered: space for my children to be children. Emma ran through the backyard that first day, like she'd discovered a new continent. Tyler chased butterflies and picked dandelions with the serious concentration of a 3-year-old scientist. Watching them explore their new world reminded me why I'd made this difficult choice. The transition wasn't easy. Working remotely while managing 2 kids required military-level scheduling. I woke at 5 a.m. to complete projects before the children needed breakfast. I conducted video calls during their afternoon naps. I worked late into the night after they went to bed. But slowly, we found our rhythm. I enrolled Emma in kindergarten at the local elementary school. The teacher, Mrs. Peterson, was warm and understanding about our situation. Tyler thrived in a home daycare run by a retired grandmother named Rose, who treated him like her own grandchild. Our new community embraced us in ways my extended family never had. Neighbors brought casseroles during our first week. The woman next door, Janet, offered to babysit in emergencies. The local grocery store owner, Mr. Chen, always asked about the kids and saved the best apples for them. 3 months after the move, my remote work performance earned me a raise. It wasn't huge, but it meant we could afford small luxuries like pizza nights and trips to the local ice cream shop. More importantly, it validated my decision to rebuild our lives independently. I thought about my parents often during those early months. Part of me hoped they'd call to check on us, to see how their grandchildren were adjusting to such a major change. They never did. Chloe visited frequently, often bringing groceries and staying to help with bedtime routines. She was furious with our parents and had started limiting her own contact with them. "They ask about you sometimes," she told me during one visit. "But they phrase it like you're going through a phase, like you'll come crawling back when you realize how hard it is on your own." Their dismissive attitude only strengthened my resolve. I was determined to prove that leaving their dysfunctional family dynamic was the best decision I'd ever made. The real test came 6 months after our move. Emma needed surgery to remove her tonsils. It was routine, but any medical procedure involving your child is terrifying. I had to take time off work, arrange childcare for Tyler, and navigate the healthcare system alone. My first instinct was to call my parents. Despite everything, some part of me still expected them to show up during a crisis involving their grandchildren. I stared at my phone for 20 minutes before putting it down without dialing. Instead, I called Maria. She drove 3 hours to be with us at the hospital. Rose kept Tyler overnight without being asked. Janet brought homemade soup for Emma's recovery. My chosen family showed up in ways my biological family never had. That experience taught me the difference between people who love you and people who simply claim to love you. Love isn't just a feeling. It's a series of actions taken consistently over time. Asterisk, asterisk. 1 year later, asterisk, asterisk. As I write this, Emma is in first grade and reading above her level. Tyler has grown 2 inches and lost his baby lisp. We've painted every room in the house, planted a vegetable garden, and adopted a rescue dog named Buddy. I've been promoted twice at work, and am now managing a team of 5 remote employees. The financial stress that once kept me awake at night has eased considerably. We're not wealthy, but we're comfortable and secure. More importantly, we're happy. The anxiety that used to sit like a weight in my chest has lifted. I no longer walk on eggshells or analyze every family interaction for signs of favoritism. We've built a life based on mutual respect and genuine care. My relationship with Chloe has grown stronger than ever. She's applied to graduate programs near us and talks about moving to Millbrook after finishing her master's degree. She says, being around our family makes her remember what healthy relationships feel like. Have you ever discovered that the people who claim to love you most are actually the ones holding you back? Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is walking away from those who consistently choose others over you. Jake called me 2 months ago. It was the first time we'd spoken since I moved to Millbrook. His voice was strained, different from the confident tone I remembered. Sam, I need to talk to you about something important, he said. Can we meet somewhere neutral? I'll drive to you. Curiosity won over caution. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory where neither of us held the advantage. He looked older when he walked in. The easy smile I'd envied growing up was replaced by worry lines around his eyes. He ordered black coffee and sat across from me like we were strangers negotiating a business deal. I know what you're thinking, he said, and you're right to be angry. I've been the favorite our whole lives, and I never questioned why. I waited for him to continue. This conversation felt too important to rush with polite reassurances. My marriage is falling apart, he admitted. Jennifer found out about all the money Mom and Dad have given me over the years. She feels like I've been lying about our financial situation. Like I've been taking credit for success I didn't earn. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Sympathy for his pain, but also validation that I wasn't crazy for seeing the unfairness of our family dynamics. The new house was supposed to fix everything, he continued. Give us a fresh start. Show Jennifer I could provide for our family. Instead, it's highlighted how dependent I am on them. How little I've actually accomplished on my own. Jake looked directly at me for the first time since he'd sat down. I called them last month and told them to stop giving me money. No more loans, no more early inheritances, no more bailouts. I need to learn to succeed or fail on my own merits. How did they take that? I asked. He laughed bitterly. About as well as you'd expect. Mom cried. Dad accused me of being ungrateful. They said I was throwing away opportunities they never had at my age. But you stuck to your decision? I had to. I realized I was 31 years old and had no idea who I was without their financial support. I'd become addicted to their approval, and it was destroying my marriage and my self-respect. Jake paused, seeming to gather courage for what came next. I owe you an apology, not just for accepting all that money while you struggled, but for never speaking up when they treated you differently. I knew it was wrong, but it benefited me, so I stayed quiet. His honesty was unexpected and deeply appreciated. Thank you for saying that, I said. It means more than you know. We talked for 2 more hours about our childhoods, our parents, expectations, and what healthy family relationships actually look like. By the end, I felt like I was meeting my brother for the first time. Jake has been working to rebuild his life without our parents' financial interference. It's been difficult, but he says he feels more proud of small successes he's earned than major achievements they funded. His marriage is slowly healing as he learns to be honest about his struggles instead of maintaining a facade of effortless success. My parents haven't reached out to me directly, but Chloe reports they ask about us regularly. They seem confused by my continued absence from family events, like they expected me to get over my tantrum by now. I don't carry anger toward them anymore. I understand that their favoritism came from their own fears and limitations, not from a lack of love for me. But understanding doesn't mean accepting. I've learned that you can love people while still protecting yourself from their dysfunction. The most surprising development has been how much my children have thrived without the complicated family dynamics. Emma is confident and outgoing in ways she never was before. Tyler is creative and joyful, unencumbered by the tension that used to permeate family gatherings. They don't ask about their grandparents anymore. Their world is full of people who show up consistently, who celebrate their achievements, who offer comfort during difficulties. They're learning what healthy relationships look like by experiencing them daily. I want to end by asking all of you something important. Have you ever stayed in a relationship that consistently made you feel less valuable than you know you are? Whether it's family, friends, or romantic partners, you deserve people who choose you consistently, not just when it's convenient. If this story resonated with you, please share your own experiences in the comments. Sometimes we need to hear other people's stories to recognize our own patterns. And if you know someone who's struggling with family favoritism or feeling invisible in their own family, please share this video with them. Don't forget to like this video if it helped you see your own relationships more clearly. Subscribe for more stories about choosing yourself, setting boundaries, and building the life you actually want. Your future self will thank you for the courage to change what isn't working.